I'm Brendan Gulick. Welcome to Buckeye Breakdown. Look, it's impressive because Ohio State is they appear to be that much better every week than their opponent. I realize, and I said this last night, I've said this for a couple of weeks now. I don't want to get overly worked up about beating defenses the caliber of Akron, Rutgers, Maryland, and Indiana. And yet, now that we've seen this 4 weeks in a row, I think you can't help but at least acknowledge last night you watched the game, and it's literally like Ohio State was playing a different sport than Indiana was. They're faster, they're bigger, they're far more physical at the line of scrimmage on both sides of the ball. I don't think Ohio State had a single negative play in the first quarter and a half. And all of a sudden, you blink twice. It was 37-7. I've got a couple stats here I want to throw your way that sort of illustrate how wild this game was. So Indiana has 128 yards of total offense, 128 in a four-quarter game. 75 of that came on the first drive. They had 53 yards of offense the rest of the game, and 17 of those yards came on the final four plays when they were literally running out the clock at the end of the fourth quarter. They basically had 39 yards of offense after their first drive and before they ran the clock out. That is bonkers. That's literally a yard per play, basically. I have never seen a Division I football game between two Power 5 teams that's been the case. And maybe I didn't pay close enough attention to what Georgia did to Vanderbilt because I know that was a bloodbath, but I didn't see the stats from that game. But man, I'm telling you, that is wow type stuff to me. I don't care, who's hurt or who's not playing. Micah McFadden is legitimately a top 10 linebacker in the country. He played his buns off last night and was kind of irrelevant. On the offensive side, I'm a big fan, by the way, of Bill Landis, who writes for The Athletic. Bill's a great guy, but he's one of my favorite guys on the beat. And I've said a number of these things, but I think he put it really succinctly. So I'm going to read you an excerpt from what he wrote last night in his post-game story. I really encourage you to check it out. I know The Athletic's a subscription site, but it's certainly worthwhile. He's talking about how in sync the offense has been. He says, in sync, this is a quote from his article last night. In sync is one way to put it. Another would be to say that it feels like Ohio State's offense is operating in a video game mode on easy with all the sliders turned up to 100. It's almost comical how effortless it's looked the last 3 games. The offense has had 24 drives with C.J. Stroud at quarterback against Rutgers, Maryland, and Indiana. It scored touchdowns on 20 of them. The other 4 were a field goal, a kneel down at the end of the half against Maryland, a 3-play drive to end the half against Rutgers, and a punt to open the second half on Saturday night. That was the first time the first-team offense had been held to a punt since the second quarter of the Akron game on September 25th. In its last 156 plays with Stroud at quarterback, the offense has scored 150 points. That's absurd. That is completely absurd. So, again, I realize, the level of competition. I know the people that don't want to accept or believe what they're seeing from the Buckeyes yet are going to – the first thing they're going to say is Ohio State hasn't beaten an opponent that I care about. They lost to Oregon, who was the only good team on their schedule. They couldn't get it done. And the other teams they've beaten, so what? And I get that. But I think if you're really actually truly watching the game, the team you saw on the field against Oregon and the team you see on the field now, it's like it's a completely different team. From a confidence perspective, literally on defense, it's a different scheme. It's a different play caller. You've seen some different personnel in places. It's truly a different group. This team is really scary right now.
Brendan, we talk about it all the time. It's a quarterback-driven sport. And the reason I'm going to bring up the quarterback position is twofold. One, you look at the fact that C.J. Stroud is playing absolutely bonkersly good. I mean, he is completing passes. He's playing. I mean, his patience last night, and this is where, and I know like I believe it was Pro Football Focus last night gave a shout out to his best throw of the year, which was the one over the middle into like triple coverage where he just placed it perfectly. But that was a great throw. But my favorite throw of the night of C.J. Stroud was the check down to Cade Stover. And this was, and someone goes, wait, the check down to Cade Stover. He went through his progression. Cade Stover was the 5th receiver in the progression on that play. We are watching a 19-year-old quarterback mature at an alarming rate. And when he can sit back there and the offensive line can give him the time to do this, what he's going to do is he's going to pick people apart. This kid is special. I mean, and the ability for him to understand, I'm not going to run. Like, I'm going to wait. Somebody's going to get open. And he extends the play with his arm, his mind, and his legs. And it's something that's really exciting to see from that standpoint. I say this about quarterback play because he's extending the plays for the offense. The offensive line is giving him time. But the defense has really only played one quarterback who played lights out, and that's Anthony Brown Jr. did against Ohio State for Oregon. Now, a lot of us have watched Oregon since then. He has played absolutely awful since he played against Ohio State. Anthony Brown played the game of his life that day, and that's what it took for them to be able to beat Ohio State that day. We're going to see Ohio State going down the road, and we've got, I don't want to jump ahead, but we're going to go play Penn State next week, and everyone's like, well, Penn State lost to Iowa and Illinois and da-da-da-da-da. Like, you can't fault Ohio State for this. And this happens every single year. Ohio State dominates in the Big Ten, and then people go, well, they only play in the Big Ten. No, they don't only play in the Big Ten. They're playing against FBS Division I college football programs that recruit the same way they recruit, that try to go get the same type of players, that have incredible coaches that scheme things up. You said earlier, like 75 yards on the first drive last night. Nick Sheridan in the Indiana offense. Nick, all week as an offensive coach, and I'm going down a big rabbit hole here, but as an offensive coach, you have on your call sheet your openers. And what I mean by your openers is usually you script between 8 to 16 of your first plays within the game that you anticipate how the game's going to go. Those 8 to 16 plays, those players that are executing them, they've run those plays X amount of times, X amount of times, X amount of times, X amount of times. Brendan, I don't know if you have a jumper or not, but I'm sure going back and forth between us, one of us could shoot a basketball better than the other person. Just God-given. Now, if you have more repetitions, let's just say in this analogy, you're a better free throw shooter than I am. All right? Well, I take a ton of reps, and you don't practice those reps for quite some time, and I shoot, and I shoot, and I shoot, and I shoot, and I shoot. Well, I'm going to make more free throws most likely because of the fact that what? I've practiced those reps. That's what those openers do. Like last night, Indiana had those openers. They had the Ohio State schemed up for that first drive because those players had run those plays, probably starting on Tuesday in practice, ran it Wednesday, ran it Thursday, or walked through it on Thursday, depending on what model they use it there. And then Friday had a fast practice or whatever they do at Indiana. And so those guys have seen those plays 4 times. Most likely, those plays that they were running in that opening drive, they've run 4 to 5 times during the week. The reason I bring that up is because of the repetitions that they get, it gives them an ability to have a little bit of confidence in the plays and be ready to go. Ohio State, on the other hand, is just so far superior athletically and also with what they're calling that it puts them on a different level. And as they continue to do that, the defense settled down last night. They played really, really good football, really sound football. I can't say enough about the development of Steele Chambers. I think that he adds another element to the defense. Now, I know last night on the stat sheet, I think he only had 1 tackle, but the way that he moves, the way that he holds people up for other people to come in and get him, they've done a really good job at linebacker. They're finally starting to play a little bit better there. But then the defensive line, Larry Johnson and his guys last night wreaked havoc all night long. Haskell Garrett is the key to the defense of the Ohio State Buckeyes. What are you talking about? If Haskell Garrett is healthy and is able to go penetrate and move people and get going, like the Ohio State defense plays that much better. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers, like when they were like outstanding defensively, when Greg Schiano was there, like they had McCoy, they had Joe McCoy. Joe McCoy, you can't work around a great defensive tackle. When teams have a great defensive tackle, that guy's going to be in the play one way or the other. You can't isolate him. You really can't read him. There's not an RPO game to get away from it. You can do that with defensive ends. You watch the Cleveland Browns on Thursday night. Von Miller was the only player that the Broncos had that the Browns were concerned about. What do? They read him. They did different things. They chipped. They nudged him. You can't do that with a defensive tackle. So when the defensive tackles play that strong, it makes everyone behind them that much better. And that's where the Buckeyes are playing. And it's such an elite and high level right now defensively.